This is cs952 Introduction to Web Technologies and Design, and we're going to continue building our image gallery. So in the last video we added our 8 images. We provided text for the alternate attribute for each image and for the title attribute for each image. We also got rid of the width and the height because we're going to be using CSS to control the width and the height of our images. So let's switch to live view. Now, live view is a much more accurate rendering of what our web page will look like, but we have fewer editing features available to us, but that's okay. Now, I'm going to select an image tag here in my status bar. Doesn't really matter which image we happen to be on. And in the last video, I had reduced our panels, right? I'd collapsed the panels so we had a little bit more room to work with. This time I'm going to choose to expand the panels. Alrighty, so we're back where we were before. Just in case, I'm going to reset to beginner. And we're going to create a new style rule. We're going to go to CSS Designer. As before, we want to make sure that we have styles selected, because styles is where we store all the styles that are unique to this website. We're going to select global, and we're going to add a new selector. Now, the selector that Dreamweaver is suggesting is a compound selector. It's made up of a class. The class is column MD12. And then there's an ID, photo gallery, and then there is an HTML tag, IMG. Well, we don't really need the first part. We could keep it, everything would work just fine, but just to keep our code as clearly understandable as possible, just to keep ourselves to the essentials, I'm going to press the up arrow key on my keyboard. And when I do, Dreamweaver removes that first selector, which was the class. And now we're down to the heart of what we really need, which is pound photo gallery space IMG. And what this means is that we're going to create a selector, and this selector is going to target images IMG, because remember, our photos are all inside of an image tag. Every photo that we have, it's inside of an image tag. So we're going to target all of the images that are inside of a container that has an ID of photo gallery. And that's all of our images, right? We took our images, and every time we added an image, it was inside of the div that we assigned an ID of photo gallery. So this selector is going to target every single image. Whatever properties we give to an image, that property will be shared by all of the images. So I'm going to hit enter, and that is the selector that I wanted to create. Okay. Now, first thing we're going to do is we're going to go to our width property. And for our width, we're going to choose percentage. And as soon as I did that, the screen went blank because you can see we have a width of 0%. I'm going to type in 100 and hit enter. Okay? So I've said I want my images to be 100% width. 100% of whatever space that there may be available for my image. I want my images to be 100% wide. Not 1,000 pixels or 500 pixels like we did in the previous video, but 100%. Now let's see what happens when we use this rule that says width 100%. I'm going to go down to my little globe. I'm going to choose preview in Chrome, or I could just hit F12. Then Dreamweaver lets me know that some files need to be saved to accurately preview this page. And again, Dreamweaver is talking about our CSS file. We know that because when we look at our related files, the only file that has an asterisk next to it is our styles.css. And any time we see a file with an asterisk next to it, that means it has unsaved changes. So I'm going to say yes. And here we go. Now look at what's happening. As I resize the web browser, the size of the image is changing because we put in a rule that says make that image 100% of whatever is holding the image. So this is really effective. We're using CSS rules to resize our image so the size of the image will automatically adjust itself to be 100% of whatever container we have that in. Much better than what we had before. Now, we're going to get a little bit more creative with what we can do. We're going to resize our images. We're going to lay them out differently depending on whether you're using a smartphone or a tablet computer. We're going to start to take advantage of media queries. Media queries are basically rules that only take effect under certain circumstances. Now, you can write media queries for all different kinds of circumstances. There are a wide range of possibilities, but the only property that we care about is how wide is the device that we're using to view our web page. That's, for us, is going to be the critical issue. If the device that we're using to look at our web page is 350 pixels wide, it's probably an iPhone. If it's 1,000 pixels wide, it's probably a small laptop. If it's 1,500 pixels, it's almost certainly a desktop computer or a very large laptop. So we're going to start to create some rules. We're going to say, under this circumstance, do this. Under this circumstance, do this. Now, Bootstrap already has these rules in place that we've been using for their responsive elements. We're going to write some specific rules just for our photo gallery so we can get a little experience with using media queries. And a media query, media meaning what kind of device are we using to view it, and query is like a question. So we're asking a question about what kind of device we're using to view our website. So once again, we're going to go to CSS Designer. We want to make sure that we have style selected because that's where we're saving all the custom rules for our website. And this time, rather than selecting global, we're going to do something different. We're going to create a new media query, and we're going to match some of the media queries that we already have in Bootstrap. So our media queries are going to be the same as the Bootstrap media queries, but we're saving our media queries in our styles.css file. So how do we do this? Where it says at media, right now it says global. We're going to click on the plus button and add a media query. Okay? We click on that plus button and we get a window that says define media query. The first condition that we have says that the media is a screen. Now we could write a media query just for print. Like when you print out a web page, you could have some things show, some things not show. You can see we've got handheld, braille, projection. But we're going to leave our media at screen. That's what we're concerned about. Now we have another plus over here that says add a condition. So we're still talking about screen devices, whether it's a smartphone or a desktop computer. So we're going to click on our plus to add another condition. You can see that says add condition. And we're going to say that the minimum width of whatever we're using to view has to be at least what? It has to be 768 pixels. Now where do I get 768 pixels from? That's the same number that we have in Bootstrap. If you look up at the top of the screen, just up above there, where we see our different media breakpoints, 768 pixels is the minimum width that we use to define a small device. Okay, so now I'm going to just say OK. Now we've got our first new media query. If I drag down here, we can see under styles we've got global, and now we have screen size with a minimum width of 768 pixels. We're going to add another one. Again, we're going to leave our media set to screen. We're going to click on the plus icon. Again, we're going to choose a minimum width, and this time our minimum width is going to be 992 pixels. Again, that's the same number that we have in Bootstrap to define a medium-sized device. Alrighty, I'm going to say OK. Now we've got another media query over there. And if we drag out, let me collapse to icons, we can see that our last media query in Bootstrap starts with a minimum width of 1200 pixels. So let's write one more media query, and this one for a minimum width of 1200 pixels. So I'm going to expand my panels. Again, I have styles selected. I'm going to click plus to add a new media query. And we're going to, again, leave it with screen. But the condition that we're going to add is that we have a minimum width of how many pixels? 1200. 1, 2, 0, 0. And I'm going to say OK. Great job. So now when we look in our custom styles.css file, we now have several conditions, right? We have global, same for all devices, and then we have for small devices, for medium devices, and then for large devices, we've got the same breakpoints that we would have for Bootstrap. So I'm going to hit Save All, and then in our next video, we're going to get started adding some rules to actually use these media queries to effectively change our gallery site.